I think what you see in Provo is this excitement of and willingness to be an entrepreneur. People really want to start their own thing here. And I've seen it as well in this younger generation. I have 3 adult children, and one of my children has started her own company, and she's 24. And at 24, I never would have had the bravery to do something like that.
Well, tell us what you do.
Okay. So I am the CEO of RevRoad. We're a venture firm here in Provo. Though, as you know, we do venture a little differently than a traditional VC in that we deploy human capital instead of checks. Though we're actually switching things up a little bit there as well, as we're changing our business model a little bit. So we've really enjoyed what we do. We have a team of experienced entrepreneurs that are experts in their fields, whether it's focused on product development or go-to-market strategy. And they get to work alongside the founders that we bring in our portfolio to help them know what pitfalls to avoid, know how to handle their go-to-market strategy, how to do customer development, all of those things, and help them along their journey as they're working with them and consulting with them.
That's cool. So it's like an accelerator. It really is a very unique model. It's almost like the studio model.
It is.
Right?
Yes. Yes. And I've heard a lot of people refer to it as a venture platform model, et cetera. Right. It's this concept that the original founders had, which was there are opportunities out there for founders to find and receive capital. But often what they really need are people who can be mentors, but even more so who can actually help them do the things that they need to do to grow. And so it's great to have money, but if you don't know how to really do customer development, to make sure that you have discovered a monetizable pain, to pivot when you need to pivot and what that looks like. And again, what things you should avoid in the future, how to protect your cap table. Mm-hmm. So as you're taking on funding later on, you're not in a position where that's going to be a struggle. And so the original 6 founders, they had this vision of, why don't we take the lessons that we've learned and the experience that we have and use that to help founders in their journey with the team that we put together and develop and deploy on their behalf. So it's been a fun journey. And then I took over as the CEO in August. And we're taking some of the lessons that have been learned over the last 7 years and pivoting a little bit with our business model, just like we tell our founders to do, as we're exploring and figuring out what's worked and what hasn't and what we need to do better. And moving forward with building upon the foundation that was created and adopting and adapting to what founders need today.
Tell me what attracted you to RevRoad.
So that's a great question. Darren Hill, one of my favorite people. He just has the biggest heart. And what I loved about his vision was this passion that he had for wanting to help change the statistics of how many founders don't make it. As you know, it's really hard to be an entrepreneur. And
almost impossible.
Exactly. And what do they say? 9 out of 10 companies or startups don't make it.
For sure.
And so what he wanted to change that and say, what can we do to help, even if it's only 8 out of 10 fail, right? What could we do to move the needle there? And so when I met him, my passion is to be able to help people as well. And so I just loved this vision that he had for RevRoad and was thrilled to jump on board and say, what can I do with the experiences I've had and the network that I have to help make that a reality?
So what were you doing before RevRoad?
I was in government. So my career journey has been an interesting one. Though I started out in the startup world here in Utah as well. I actually pivoted in 2012 after we sold the company, and I had an opportunity to take a step back. And I had this crazy idea of, why don't I run for office? And I decided to do that. And so I served as a member of the city council in my city and then as mayor. And when Spencer Cox was elected to be governor, he reached out to me and asked me to join his cabinet, specifically brought me on to consolidate 3 agencies into one, which is now the Department of Government Operations. And so I was at the state consolidating agencies before I came over to RevRoad.
What was your experience in politics? It's really interesting. And it seems like it's only gotten crazier and more risky, I guess, for people, like reputationally risky, right? And kind of like almost like pretty thankless. And what's the reward for something like that? What was your experience doing that? And what was your experience working with Spencer?
Those are great questions. And I feel like politics is just getting uglier all the time. And I know you can look at history and see those ebbs and flows. And so it's not the worst it's ever been, but also not the greatest it's ever been. I loved it, especially at the city level. I felt that's where you can make an impact on the community where you live, right? Where
city were you mayor?
Cedar Hills.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Still live there. Love it. Great place to raise a family. Great place to live. And so in those situations, you're impacting, you're making decisions on where your kids go to school, where you're shopping, what road you're driving on, et cetera, the things that impact your day-to-day life. I wish more people understood that what happens in your city government impacts your day-to-day life far more than anything that happens at federal government. So people should pay a lot more attention to what happens in their city government. But I loved it. I loved serving as mayor. Other than COVID, that was a hard time to be an elected official. Loved that opportunity though. And I really enjoyed my time at the state as well. But I think the higher up you get in government, of course, the more bureaucratic it gets. And it can be really hard to move the needle and really slow. And politics influence decisions. And for somebody who likes to just go in and get things done, it can be really challenging. Loved working with Spencer. I think he is a visionary and I love what he has done for especially founders and entrepreneurship here in Utah. Love that he has Brad Bonham as an advisor and helping to influence. He is fantastic. So it was great to work with Spencer.
Yeah, Spencer is a very, very good man.
He is.
Very good man. We're lucky to have him in the state.
I agree.
Okay, so you go to RevRoad, and there's also it's kind of interesting. We should probably explain this to people listening and watching. There's RevRoad, what you do, like the studio venture platform model, right? And then there actually is a venture capital firm.
Yes, our sister company.
But that's separate.
It is
kind of separate, but also the same. Tell us about that.
It is, yeah. So we're sister companies. We're under the RevRoad umbrella, but operate as two distinct companies. So RevRoad Capital is a very traditional VC model. What's great about our relationship with RevRoad Capital, and we're with this new business model that we're implementing, we're only strengthening that relationship as well, is for companies that come into RevRoad services, there is a line to capital when that opportunity, when it's time for the founder to receive capital. And the great thing for RevRoad Capital is they have so much visibility and insight and diligence on the companies that we've been working with. With our new model, we are spending anywhere between 9 and 18 months with this founder helping them. And so they have a lot of visibility as a future funder as to how the founder's working, what things have been working, how they've pivoted, how the relationship has been, the insights that we have. So not only can we fast track funding for founders that we feel like, yes, this is a great product, this is a great founder, we want to keep pushing this forward, but RevRoad Capital and their investors are really de-risking those investments by having so much time for RevRoad services to engage with those founders.
You know what I love about what you're doing is we didn't bring in Techstars. This is homegrown.
Yes.
This is, a very Utah way of doing this. It's, it'll succeed or fail based on Utahns, which I love the most. And Techstars, nothing against Techstars, by the way. And they've tried to come here a few times, and we'd welcome them, obviously. But I love that RevRoad is Utah.
Yes.
There's something really special about that. And as you think about what you're building and what RevRoad could be, what do you look at? Do you look at you're not an accelerator exactly, but do you look at things like Y Combinator, which is probably the best version of this that's ever existed?
Absolutely. So we're looking at who has done this in the past and what has made them successful, not just for themselves, but has helped their founders along the journey. And that's one of the reasons why we're changing our business model right now. So when RevRoad first started, the original model was we're going to be industry agnostic. We're going to provide services for 2 years, these 12 services. And we've learned lessons along the way as again, what works and what doesn't. And so we've really refined as we're looking at what Y Combinator does, what other successful accelerators have done, but also what founders have said coming out of Y Combinator, what they loved about it, but also what they field was missing or what help they needed after that. I think it's a 12-week program, 10 or 12-week program.
Yeah.
So what we're doing now is we've scaled our services that we're to now where we're providing 6 core services. And those are the things that we know we do exceptionally well and that can actually move the needle for founders. And again, on one of 2 tracks, either product development or go-to-market. We've narrowed our focus. We're no longer industry agnostic. We're really looking at what industries are getting venture funding later on, because our goal at a pre-seed stage is to help them prepare
raise the next
for
round.
Exactly. And so if it's not an industry that is getting venture funding, then probably not a good fit for us, and we're not a good fit for them. The other thing that we're doing in line with RevRoad Capital is they're currently in the process of raising a pre-seed fund. So we'll start doing co-investments with them, meaning when we bring them into RevRoad services, they'll get services and a check from RevRoad Capital. One of the things we've seen is services are very helpful, but at the pre-seed stage, a lot of founders are struggling just to keep the lights on, right? And they need money to be able to focus on continuing to build their product. So we're really excited about this new co-investment where they'll receive a small amount of capital to allow them to really engage with our service teams to progress throughout their journey.
How much equity do you take on the services side?
So we do it on a SAFE. Now that's something that we've recently changed as well. So we have 2 distinct programs. Our first is called Ascent and the second is Summit. With both of them, we invest $250,000 worth of services. And for the Ascent program, which is there needs still a lot of validation. We sign a SAFE at a 3.125 million cap. And then at the Summit phase, we anticipate bringing about 50% of the companies that come through Ascent to our Summit program. And that one is another SAFE at an 8 million cap.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
And our terms are all on our website now. We want it to be really transparent, and founders that sign up with us, they know from the very beginning what they're agreeing to, what that looks like. The other thing that we spend a lot of time doing with our investments team is doing a ton of research with PitchBook and Crunchbase to make sure that we're staying within industry norms at that pre-seed stage, especially. As I mentioned, we don't want to ruin anyone's cap table. And so we wanted to make sure that as they're progressing through their journey, what is a standard percentage of equity that founders should retain at each level, and make sure that we're in alignment with that.
How much of the services is like, hey, we want to get you further along than, because what Y Combinator does that's really great is they're going to prepare you for a demo day, and they're really going to prepare you for your next round and make those introductions. And they have that's kind of what YC is the best at, right? It's just like helping you raise your next round. And when you're in that program, they're trying to increase revenue and doing a lot of sales stuff. But for the most part, it's, get ready for demo day.
Right.
And raise money. How do you think about that? Because it is kind of your job at the end of this to help them raise their next round. Do we have the ecosystem here for that to work in the same way that it works in YC?
There's still a lot of growth opportunity here in Utah. We don't restrict ourselves to just Utah. So number one, for portfolio companies, we have portfolio companies all across the country, and we have relationships with investors here in Utah. That's where we would prefer to be able to align and to make those relationships. But if that opportunity isn't here, then we'll make sure that we put our founders in front of the best opportunities for them to receive funding. Our chief investment officer, Harold Alvarez, we recruited him from Miami, I want to say 9 or 10 months ago. He has a tremendous network. And so he's continuing to build that, right? With this understanding of what you just said, it's our job to help our founders eventually with that next round. And so one of the services that we offer is capital raising and making those introductions and making sure that whether it's here in Utah or outside of Utah, that we're establishing and building those relationships and making those introductions and helping prepare for the pitch. So when our founders are at that stage, we're a resource and a partner with them through that.
Yeah, that's an interesting. So when somebody gets accepted, do they have to go to? Because are you guys still in the old Daily Herald?
No, we're
office?
At the Provo Kiln.
Oh,
we moved there.
Very cool.
Just over a year ago, right when Arian opened the doors. We were the first tenants in.
That's such a great space.
I love it. I
actually really like the old Daily Herald space, dude.
It was great. Yes.
Awesome.
So Corbin's over there now with iHub.
Okay.
Yeah. So they moved into our old space and we're at Kiln. So just down the street.
Yeah. Kiln. So that's a good move. That's incredible. But do people have to come to Utah once they get accepted
They
into the
do
program?
not. They do not.
Interesting.
One of I think the good things that came out of COVID was a greater acceptance that we can do things virtually. We don't have to be in person. We prefer as much as we can to be in person, but especially with our founders, no, they don't need to move here. We're always welcome to be here if they would like. One of the things that we love about Kiln is for each of our founders, we offer them a membership with Kiln so they can come work in any of the open spaces.
Mm-hmm.
If they are flying in out of state, we can make sure that they have conference room space or working space while they're here, but it's not a requirement for us.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It wasn't always the case, right? It used to have to be.
Yes. Yeah. Originally, the thought
COVID
was
did change everything, huh?
It did. It really did. Like I said, some things not great, but some things have been helpful. And I think that's one of the things that I've really appreciated. I think it's expanded opportunities for people that otherwise maybe wouldn't have those opportunities because they can't relocate or they can't be in an office every single day. So it's one of the things that we've really embraced is we can work very closely with you and still have great outcomes without having to physically be present with each other all the time.
Tell me what you think of this. It's an interesting dilemma and choice that we have here in the state of Utah, because we do have a strong venture community and you do want money to stay in Utah if you're Utahn, right? Mm-hmm. I think you want that. I'm not, I probably don't care, right? If SAP is going to buy Qualtrics for $8 billion, who cares?
Right. It still benefits Utah.
But I do care. It would be preferable, I should say, that our VC funds were in the winners, right? And then so there's that piece, and then there's how do I raise and help my companies raise at the very best terms and have exposure to the very best VC funds, which obviously we have some of those here in Utah, but in Silicon Valley funds, you mentioned Miami, and New York City, Boston, how do you make Utah more on the map for, not that it isn't, because it definitely is, but to bringing those people in?
Right. That's a great question. And I think it's something that Utah is doing and continues to do. But like anything, it takes time to show what we're doing here and why having a presence here is best for those VCs. I think you're seeing that with Silicon Slopes, right? With technology is for the longest time, Utah really wasn't a place that people considered when it came to technology. And you saw these companies start to move here for various benefits, whether it was tax benefits or outdoor recreation and just the quality of life here and what a lot of employees were looking for. And it started to gather interest. And I anticipate that you'll continue to see that, whether it's people like Spencer and government officials who really want to be found business friendly and make sure that we are not regulating to the point where it's really impossible to do business here or taxing to the point that nobody wants to be here, and showing that we have something special here. And so continuing to build and with the technology sector here, I think you'll see more VCs that as they see that community grow and see the successes that are coming out of Utah, that interest will start to increase. I was just in San Francisco, I want to say 3 weeks ago. We were presenting to some of the Silicon Valley investors, and there were quite a few who were starting to ask, what's happening in Utah? They're paying a little bit more attention, and I only see that growing.
I think they definitely pay attention to our companies at about the Series B level.
Yes.
Our Series B companies can probably raise from anywhere.
Right.
I just, at the early stage, I still think we have some work to do to get them engaged.
Agreed.
At that level.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
And it's one of the reasons why we are making sure that we're continuing to build those relationships and that community inside Utah, but also outside of Utah, as we want our portfolio companies to have exposure to venture capital, regardless of where they are. And I think more and more as those groups outside of Utah see what is being built here and seeing the opportunity here, that's what will continue to interest them in and motivate them to want to spend more time and more money here in the state.
You mentioned businesses that are getting venture funding beyond, their time with RevRoad. So I assume that's a lot of tech companies. But it's not only tech companies because I don't know what you would qualify Hyperquake as.
Hypercraft, I know.
Hypercraft, sorry. No, yeah. Hyperquake is a marketing firm here in the state of Utah. Yeah, Hypercraft, it is obviously very tech heavy, but I don't know how you qualify that exactly. But man, that's an incredible company.
It is.
I'm very excited about Hypercraft.
We are as well. Jake's an incredible founder. Yeah. So yeah, it's most people will get it as green tech, but it's also EV. It's a little bit in the middle there, but doing incredible things and gaining attention, not just here in the United States, but funders outside of the country who are in conversations with Jake wanting to be part of his race.
It's such a big thing, like it's such a big swing.
Yes.
I love seeing more and more of those big swings coming out of Utah.
I agree. It was interesting going back to your previous question as well. I was at an event recently here. It was up in Eden. I don't know if you were there as well, the Utah founders.
Thing,
yes. And you remember when they pulled us all in separate groups and just allowed us to have conversations with each other about what's happening here in Utah. And one of the questions that came up was, why do we see so many companies in Silicon Valley go public? And that's not happening here in Utah. And it was such an intriguing conversation. And I don't know that anybody has the answer yet. But one of the things that was mentioned is in Silicon Valley, you find a lot of tech founders. And in Utah, you find a lot of founders who have incredible sales and marketing skills, but maybe technology is not as strong here. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the things that I am hoping to see here in Utah, and I say this about founders like Jake, we need more people who have those technology chops, right? Mm-hmm. And can build really strong product that is solving a problem that people are willing to pay for. And so Jake's a great example of that. He's not afraid to just go big and to try something that's wild and crazy, and he sees a problem and he wants to fix it and he's all in. Yeah. And I think that there are many founders here, many entrepreneurs here in Utah that have that same mentality. And as technology is exploding, as AI is exploding, we just need to make sure that we're continuing to invest in those tech opportunities for education and workforce, right? That could support those companies. And find those founders who are willing to swing for the fences.
Yeah, I love like Hypercraft and then Taurus, what Nate Walkingshaw is doing there. It's incredible. That's coming out of Utah. I think Utah has a really good chance to be a leader in the energy space.
Yes, we're hearing more and more of that.
Yeah. I think energy could be the next really, it could replace SaaS for Utah. Who knows? That's a big statement because we're mostly SaaS. But there's something going on in the energy sector here in the state of Utah where there's a real opportunity.
I agree. 2 days ago, I saw something about Eagle Mountain that's updating some ordinances to allow for nuclear energy. And of course, Central Utah is a big player in the energy industry. We have our representatives and delegation that are very passionate about advocating for Utah that way. So I completely agree.
Yeah, there's something really interesting happening there. What are you seeing though? Like what types of companies are you seeing and you're excited about? And do you think something like AI might level the playing field to where maybe you don't need to be as technical moving forward?
Right. It's a great question. And I think there are still so many unknowns as it relates to AI. I know one of the things that we anticipate is that it will allow people to maybe move a little faster. And like you said, maybe they don't need to be quite as technical, though we're very hesitant at this point still to invest in a tech company that doesn't have a really strong tech founder somewhere on the team, right? You need to understand your technology and be able to build and adapt. But we're also intrigued to see what opportunities AI is providing. We're utilizing it ourselves with our software development team. They're utilizing AI more and more. As far as industries, we just brought on a new company that we're really excited about called Nomics. It's a fintech company. I think that's another area where Utah can really excel and stand out. Yes. And his company is just exploding. It's been fun to watch him. He's all over the place, it's a blockchain platform, right?
Awesome.
And everybody wants to understand this and figure out how they can utilize it and know that it's coming. And so how do we start preparing and building for it now? I think Utah could really excel in the fintech space as well.
You need to be very technical to start going into that blockchain and that type of stuff. That's pretty intense.
Security is a huge issue that we need to continually be aware of and addressing as well. So yeah, we're excited to see where things head.
Why do you think Provo is so great? What I think is really awesome about what you've done, and I'll tell you kind of why I'm asking that question, is I think you might be the only fund in Provo. But Provo is where everything starts.
Right.
It's like Start City.
Right.
And it really is interesting that it doesn't get as much attention from, I mean, it does. So, all of this is kind of relative, but, our biggest companies were started here.
Right.
Silicon Slope Summit is Utah's original and longest running grassroots tech event. It provides entrepreneurs, startups, and leaders the resources and community they need to succeed. With the pandemic behind us, we're excited to bring Silicon Slope Summit back to its original January dates in conjunction with the Sundance Film Festival. We have some unbelievable news. Silicon Slope Summit is free for all Utahns for the first time ever. You heard that right. Silicon Slope Summit is now free. For those looking for an upgraded experience, we are also offering VIP tickets for just $95. Thanks to our partners, sponsors, and government leaders, Silicon Slope Summit is the most accessible tech and startup event in the world. Summit will be hosted in multiple locations throughout the week in both Utah and Salt Lake Valley. There will also be a Startup Alley at Summit this year, where startups and entrepreneurs can meet with investors from around the world to pitch their ideas, receive feedback, and promote what they're building. Of course, we'll be bringing in world-class leaders and speakers, as we have in the past, but we'll also be hosting specific tracks and bringing attendees together for curated networking in a way never done before. You don't want to miss this year's summit. To register, buy VIP tickets, learn about sponsorship, and apply for your startup to be part of Startup Alley. Go to siliconslopes.com/summit.
I think what you see in Provo is this excitement of and willingness to be an entrepreneur. People really want to start their own thing here. And I've seen it as well in this younger generation. I have 3 adult children, and one of my children has started her own company, and she's 24. And at 24, I never would have had the bravery to do something like that. But you see that a lot in Provo, again, especially with the college students. And so I think having 2 big universities here is a big part of that.
Entrepreneurial universities.
Exactly.
Too.
Yes.
UVU maybe even more than BYU.
I love what they're doing. Well, and really all of the universities in Utah are embracing that. I was just visiting with Troy at Lassonde Center a few weeks ago, and he is fantastic. Great. I love what they've done there. I would love to build that down here as well. But the Master of Business Creation, this new degree that they have, there's this understanding in Utah that we embrace and have a higher number of entrepreneurs in Utah than anywhere else. And I think Provo is the center of that. And I think you'll see that shift as Utah County in general is just continuing to grow. In 2040, I think the state projects Utah County will have a larger population than Salt Lake County. And so you'll see, especially Provo, more on the map when it comes to that. And I think Provo City and others here have really embraced and want to be known as, if you want to start a company, Provo's the place to be.
Yeah, I really think it is too. It's just the community that and the mentors and, the things that you can do here. I mean, it's true up and down the Wasatch Front, but there really is something kind of special here in Provo that kind of stands out.
Agreed. And that's why when we were looking for new space, our entire team is very passionate about making sure that we stayed in Provo. And I say that as a University of Utah diehard Utes fan. But for RevRoad, for this ecosystem, I can't imagine a better place to be than Provo. Yeah. We love it here. And the Kiln, a fantastic partner, and what they have built as well, very entrepreneur mindset.
Particularly the Provo Kiln is awesome. Like from the ground up, you got to build it his own way.
Yes,
it's awesome.
It's the best one.
Yeah.
And so just seeing the number of students and people who are looking to build something that are coming in and out of Provo. It's been great exposure for us as well to be able to have a place where people with a similar mindset who have that passion for entrepreneurship can be in one spot and just bounce ideas off of each other. The other thing I think about Utah County in general, but especially Provo, is just this willingness to help wherever it's needed. I have been to so many events and I'm just continually blown away when I'm introduced to people for the first time. And the question is, how can I help? I want to introduce you to this person. I want to make sure that you're invited to this event. There is such a willingness to have a mindset of abundance, and let's bring everyone to the table because together we will lift the entrepreneur community. I don't feel this, we're in competition with each other. We can't talk to each other. We're together. Yeah. There is such a sense of community, and let's work together to build together.
No, I've really loved seeing that because when we started, BI Startups and then Silicon Slopes, there weren't actually a lot of events. And so we were, putting on a lot of those ourselves. And to see like the community start creating their own events and doing their own events, and to the point where I'm like, why do we even do events? We should move on to something else. Because the community is so strong and like there's so many different people who are willing to get in there and help build it. I'm blown away by that. I really am blown away by it.
I am as well. And it's great for any founder who is in Utah just to have access to that ecosystem. If you get in the door through just one or two, it opens up this huge world. And, we've seen that even recently as I stepped into this role, Park City Angels, Salt Lake City Angels have reached out and said, come to our pitch days and you can see who is pitching to us and we can partner together. Corbin Church at iHub, we've had some great conversations about how do we work together to support, especially Utah County? How do we support the growth that's happening here and the people here in Provo that want to build an organization? And how do we do that together? Instead of trying to each do our own thing, let's figure out ways to partner and do it together and to each play a part in that and build it together. So yeah, we've seen it over and over.
I'm sure we'll have Corbin on here at some point.
He's fantastic.
Soon. But what's the difference between RevRoad, iHub? Give us a sense for how you two play together, because you are both in Provo, actually.
We are, really yes. Yes. So iHub is a true incubator. So they're even at a stage earlier than RevRoad would be interested in bringing someone on. And I believe, and I should leave this to Corbin to say, but I believe he's focused specifically on founders in Utah County. So if you're at iHub, you live here in Utah County. He's not bringing companies on from outside of the state, but not even outside of the county. So his focus is here. A lot of students, obviously, especially just the access from UVU and from BYU to where he's located. It's so easy to get there. And he's just created this incredible community for very early stage founders to receive mentorship, to build community with other founders who are right in the thick of this with you and experiencing some of the same challenges. And he's there himself as well, mentoring, and he has tremendous experience, obviously, from his background. And so we see an opportunity, number one, to partner up on events because we're reaching very similar audiences, especially when it comes to investors, because we're both at the early stage, pre-seed stage. We can expand a community and networking opportunities for our portfolio companies, both of us. But also we see iHub as deal flow eventually for RevRoad as he's doing that really early stage customer development, validation. And then it will get to a point where they've outgrown iHub, but RevRoad's a good next step for them in their journey. So we see that partnership being here in Utah County. You can go from the really early idea stage all the way up through a Series A with RevRoad Capital, all in your backyard.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And you do come together. You guys are working with both groups are working with us on Startup Alley.
Yes.
And we've been on a few calls there, and I'm always impressed. I'm like, what? Aren't they competitors? Aren't they? But doesn't even matter. It doesn't even come up.
No,
it's really cool.
No, we see each other as incredible partners. In fact, we have our monthly, we call them our startup stories, where we have a founder come and we interview them and we invite, it's a free event. We invite anyone to come join us. And we have that at iHub's office. Oh, so cool. We're partnering together where we're finding the panelists and doing the interview, but it's at iHub. So their founders are invited to come and they can interact with some incredible entrepreneurs here in Utah who have had success and hear their story and learn their lessons, et cetera. So no, we love what iHub is doing and the partnership. And Corbin's been nothing but very open to that relationship and how can he help and how do we do this together?
What is the reason why there's two sister companies at RevRoad? Like at some point, do you merge these two together?
It's a great question. We've talked about that sometimes. That's so far out in the future, though. I don't know what that will look like. The original vision with RevRoad was to start with the services, and then it was always the dream that next step would be to add a fund, because we wanted to be able to create a pathway for our founders to get funding and to reduce the barriers to get funding faster. And again, that came from RevRoad Capital has so much visibility and diligence because of what we're doing that the process to get funding shouldn't take as long. So that was always the plan. And it does operate as two distinct organizations. And also RevRoad Capital can invest in other companies. They don't only have to come from RevRoad Services. But who knows what it looks like 10 years from now? Do we decide that we need to be a little bit more integrated than we are? I think we've already realized that to some extent, which is why we're now moving toward this co-invest fund where companies coming in will get both services and a check from RevRoad Capital, because we see value and so much potential in both. And so I envision a day in the future where we're more integrated than even where we're planning to be in the next few years. But who knows what that will look like.
Having been in government for a while, what can the state do better to support the startup ecosystem, to support entrepreneurs? And maybe they're doing everything they can. I don't know if you've seen what's happening in Idaho. They're like deregulating the whole state. It's crazy how much what's happening in Idaho. Do we need to do stuff like that? Are we good? What are you thinking?
I tend to think that Utah does a pretty good job of balancing that. Of course, you want to be a state that's business friendly, and you don't want to make it where there are so many regulatory burdens that people just say, do not go to Utah. This is too overwhelming. On the other end of the spectrum, though, there is quite a bit of valid concern when it comes to things like data privacy and data security. And with AI, the unknowns, bad players that could use it for negative things. And so it's going to be an interesting balancing act. And I love that Department of Commerce under Margaret Bussey. I don't know if you've had her here, but she's an incredible leader herself. They just recently started the Office of Artificial Intelligence Policy, I think is what it's called. Understanding that we need to get on top of this and also need to make sure that we don't become overly burdensome. So I think it's going to be a balancing act. I think the best thing that any government entity or any elected official can do is to make sure that they're staying very close to and engaged with the private sector voices who can help them understand the impacts of any legislation, of any regulation, what it does to business, where it's going to be harmful, and make sure that they're balancing any concerns with any potential legislation. Again, that's why I love that Brad's there. I've seen him really engaged with entrepreneurs. He's come and met with us at RevRoad, and we can share concerns with him. And he's done a great job with making sure that perspective isn't lost. It's going to be really important to make sure that you're not losing sight of what Utah is known for and good at, and not getting to a point where we're making it so difficult to be successful here with all this new technology.
Yeah. Finally, what type of companies should apply? What type of companies are you looking for? How should they apply?
Yes.
What should they do? How do they do all this?
So they just go to revroad.com. There is an apply now button on the main page, and there are a series of questions that they fill out. It doesn't take very long. And then that goes to our investment team, and they'll continue on with the diligence process. We are at the pre-seed stage. So we're looking for companies who are, of course, early, but that have traction. And generally they have some revenue coming in. We'll even look at some that may not have revenue, but they have a number of beta customers. We need to see that they have market validation, that they have some traction. We're really interested in founders that are the Jakes of the world, right? We know at this stage what we're really betting on is the founder even more than the idea. And so we're looking for founders who are demonstrating grit and determination, but also humility and knowing that their great idea maybe needs some tweaks, right? And they're going to be working very closely with our team, and that they're willing to take the feedback and the guidance from the experience that we have and the feedback that they're getting from their own customers and iterate and pivot as needed. And so We're really looking for passionate, determined, and humble founders who are in that early pre-seed stage.
Yeah, it really is interesting. As an entrepreneur, you have to be both humble and irrationally confident.
Yes.
Like kind of both of those.
I know, which seems like an oxymoron almost, right? But those are the ones that are successful. And we have a number of those within the RevRoad portfolio that we're excited about. But it is this understanding that you've got to be a little bit crazy to do this. And it's going to be really hard. And you're going to be putting your blood, sweat, and tears into it for a long period of time at the pre-seed stage, right? You've got to think 10 years before you're going to see a major event, and you're going to be wearing all the hats as you're building your company. But you also need to be willing to acknowledge when you need to change and adapt and pivot and be willing to do that. I was reading a fascinating article the other day about about BlackBerry, right? I remember my BlackBerry. I love my BlackBerry, but this place that they got where they felt there's no way that people are going to want to give up their physical keyboards. And so they didn't adapt. And what ended up happening, right, is they just weren't willing to read the signs and think maybe we need to do some additional customer validation and see if we're still on track.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to the customers don't actually know what they want.
That's true too.
Which is Steve Jobs was great at. He's like, no, you think you want the keyboard, but hang on a second.
What you really want.
Here's what you actually
That's
want.
so true. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
What a pleasure to talk to you. Everybody go to RevRoad.com. Thanks for everything you do for Utah too.
Thank you.